wait. Yep, there it is. Okay, episode 7. We have the Wisconsin Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Hike to Hunt podcast coming at you. I'm joined in the studio by my lovely co-hosts, Ryan, Kelly, and Emily. Anthony is feeling under the weather. There's a bunch of that going on right now. Sending good vibes out to him. We are joined today by our lovely, beautiful guest, Joe Steffen from Wisconsin BHA. He's in charge of the R3 chair. Joe, say hello to everyone.
Oh, public landowners out there in the World Wide Web.
Here we go. We're going to be diving into part 2 of R3. So last time we talked, it was all of like the history, and Emily walked us through that. Today we're going to be diving into the future of R3, where she sees it going, how we can evolve, how it can change, and how we can actually start to move the needle going forward. So we're excited to dive into that. With that, Ryan, where are we at with the Hike to Hunt challenges?
So this week, we'll go over what you can win. There's not a real clear what to do other than get your kids out on the trail, and they can win a Weatherby compact shotgun or a Vanguard synthetic compact rifle. So something good that you may not have to buy your child if you want to get them outdoors. I'm assuming that we just need to post some stuff on social media and tag BHA, and I would assume it's going to get to the right people.
Can canines be considered children? Can my dog win the Weatherby? Because I would really like that.
I mean, it's worth a shot.
You could, Emily, so I've gotten this where my partner Marissa and I go out, and people have asked if I'm her uncle or her father, and it's super awkward. Has that happened with you and Jacob?
No.
Because I'm just.
I don't think so.
So I was gonna say if it has, you could definitely go that route and just use it for your own gains. Have Jacob post something, and then
I assume that's when you've had like a major beard going or something.
Nope. Not
Is she really short? Because I'm pretty small, and I feel like I've never gotten that before.
She's probably average size. I don't know. I just look older in person. The Zoom takes off a decade. But
oh gosh, I'm gonna have to be aware of that one.
I'm just throwing it out there. And then Ryan, I think we're gonna have to make a push. Your picture with the family is perfect. I think we can all get behind it, push that up the upstream, and make it so Dad doesn't have to buy some new firearms.
I know I'm spending plenty of money on myself right now. I don't have enough for my kids. So.
I like it. All right, so we've got that. Everybody out there. Fur babies. Emily says it's a go, so we'll make it a go. We'll I'll text the BHA peeps, let them know that it's a go, and then everybody with kids out there, you know, I've told Ryan we're using his family for social media purposes to get more people outside with their family. So hey, it's fair game. It's open, and you win cool prizes. I got a 410. It's back there in the locker right now, but there's a 410 shotgun in there I got when I was 6, so it's never too young to start. With that,
good point.
See, right? Exactly. With that, let's do a quick catch up where everyone's at with their hike to hunt. Who wants to go first?
I'll set the bar low. I was gonna say. I bet you I have the least. So
let's take. I don't think Emily's accepted my friend request yet on Map My Fitness. Or I sent it to the wrong Emily again.
I think I did find a previous profile on the Map My Fitness app when I had that, but I don't know how to log back in. And I have a profile now. I'm getting my t-shirt. It's in the mail, but I don't really know how to use it. So I need some more guidance.
All right. So that's where Emily is. We know.
So I have to carry my phone everywhere I go.
Yeah. So they can track you.
Sack in the tube sack.
Oh,
that's
tube
right.
sacks.
Didn't we talk about that?
Yeah.
We talked the tube sock armband.
That's Kelly's frugal
Yes.
Fitbit wrap or phone wrap. So yeah, right now, Joe, I think
Oh,
I still don't think they're.
You're gonna pull it up. You can actually see it.
Yeah, I still don't think they're updating yours properly.
You might be wrong.
They're like
I don't know what's that.
it says 4 miles and 3 workouts.
Yeah, that's probably wrong, but it could be right. I'm not gonna check right now. I don't want to waste everybody's time, but I'm pretty sure that might be close. It's close enough, whatever. They're trying.
Whatever. They tried to update it. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
I didn't join till last week though, so
yeah.
I mean that was only since last week, but still.
I've enjoyed all of your hot, sweaty selfies on the app. As weird as that is to say.
I feel like that's all I have to contribute to the hike hunt is my sweaty selfies. So.
All right. With that, he's got to get it off his chest. Ryan, lay it on everyone where you're at.
I don't even. Not much has changed in the past week and a half or so. I've been slacking. When I was away on work last week, I did get out in some hot, steamy weather and go for a couple short runs. So I didn't do nothing, but since then I haven't done anything. So I felt obligated to get a workout in before this, so that I don't feel quite as bad. But we're in the home stretch now. Dog days of summer are behind us, and we'll just get after it for the next few weeks here.
I like it. Kelly, where are you at?
I feel like we are still very much in the dog days of summer, which I hate running in. So it's been slow paced for me to add on any miles and see if I can make any headway on Bill's lead, which I'm not gonna. But it was never a competition for me. It was just about getting out. But I did see somebody when I was running the other day that had like a backpack on that looked like a hunting pack, and I almost stopped him. I was like, "Hey, what you up to, guy?" But I didn't. Related to hike hunt this week. Saddle up for the hat of the week discussion. The hat of the week is Cabela's. Cabela's is my mowing the lawn hat, and those I rack up some of my miles while I mow my lawn with my push mower. And I can't remember who I was talking to who said that it was Zach Bill, who is also using the push mower now to rack up a little bit of distance for the mow to hike to hunt. So there you go. That's where we're at.
That makes me feel better because my third was a mow. Bill, if you pull it up, you can see it. It's just back and forth in my yard.
Yes.
0.8 miles. It was 0.8 miles.
Why not?
I'm so excited we're all cross training for this. Like it's not just about the hike. It's getting out there and moving. I logged my first Van Beek brush workout this weekend while we were we were fortunate enough to stay at a cabin, and the only thing we had to do for it was some chores. So hauled some brush, and I posted up one of those. I felt pretty good about it. It was a good bit of cross training, but yeah, we're gonna be ramping up for bear baiting. That's gonna log me some miles, and then I've got August 1st, leashless laws off. We're unchained. We're gonna be chasing birds for all of August until upland season starts. So that'll. Kelly, you can come down or up for you. You can come up for that. That way you can log some miles. You get plenty of time chasing prairie chickens down here.
So am I in the wrong for buying a riding lawnmower recently then?
Yes. That was a big no.
No, I still have one, and when it gets really hot, I still use it. But I can get what do I get, Bill? Like I get sometimes about a mile.
Yeah, it's solid. It all adds up. You're gonna be thinking about that come hunting season when you're dragging a deer out. And you're like, really happy I logged those mow miles, those lawn mowing miles. All right.
I'm doing 0.8, but I got 300 feet of elevation.
I like it. All right, enough with hike to hunt. Everyone out there, stay active, get active, invite other people to be active. And hey, don't be afraid to, flag down people with backpacks and start a conversation. I think there it is. That's how we get through this and strengthen the community. So with that, we're going to toss it over to Emily, R3, R4, whatever it is you want to call it, Emily. Take it away.
Sounds good. Well, I want to introduce Joe Steffen, from Wisconsin BHA. So Joe, tell us how you became involved in BHA and how you came to be a guest on the Hike to Hunt podcast.
All right. So BHA, I think it was like 4 years ago now. We had just become a chapter, and there was a lot of falling out on the board because it was new. It was pretty much all the original board members, and we hadn't really done much. And I had reached out to the board chair at the time, was Jeff Gerard. And I said, hey, I want to get involved. And at that time, the only thing people didn't want to do was fundraise. So I threw a fundraiser at the Great Dane, made some money, and then they made me the fundraising chairman, and I was on the board. So that's how I got involved with BHA. It wasn't my passion. Fundraising was not my passion. That was my ticket in to the Cool Kid Club. But then I somehow I got suckered into treasurer for a little bit too.
Oh yeah, that always sucks. Yeah. Hate that position.
Yeah. So but I finally landed where I want to be, and that's in the R3 area. So I've been a hunter safety instructor for I think 6 years now, and I became a lead hunter safety instructor 5 years ago. So I've been running classes out of Stoughton, Wisconsin for the last 5 years, and we, minus this year with all the issues, we normally run 2 a year. And so I enjoy the hunter safety aspect. So from there, I just got really excited about getting, that was a lot of young folks and youth. I was excited to get the different demographics out in the woods and the people that were more likely to, a lot of the people we were getting in Stoughton, Wisconsin were their mom or dad were hunters, and they were just like, that was what they did, And so this was exciting to, late adult onset hunters seemed a lot more exciting. And I got to give props to Lucas Olson, who ran a lot of our R3 stuff prior to me, and working with him a lot. He really spearheaded a lot of BHA's R3 initiatives, and I just basically got to take the reins after that, which he had a good program going. But working with college clubs, working with, DNR folks, it was a great opportunity to see a different side of getting other people into the outdoors, which growing up in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, it's like everybody hunted. There wasn't people that didn't hunt. So living in Madison now, I got to see all these folks that were excited who didn't come from hunting families, and really got me energized to get people out there and do that. So nice. What was the second part of the question? I know there's two. I think I might have missed the one.
I don't remember the second one, but I wanted to know so it sounds like you were one of the founding members of the Wisconsin BHA chapter. Is that correct? Or was it
TJ and I were like one of the first few that joined right after it was founded. Okay. So right now there's only one founding member left, and that's Zach. And it was within a year, I believe, TJ and I joined. And then, so we were close, but not founding.
Got it. How'd you find out about it?
Founding folks kind of, because we didn't have a chapter, and they were like basically anybody that wanted to signed up, and then they realized what it meant, and then we lost about half. So TJ and I were in the second wave.
Gotcha. I am just always interested because Wisconsin BHA is a general organization. It's not that old, but Wisconsin BHA is always younger than I think it is. So did you just find out about it on Facebook, or?
I hate to be cliche, but it was Renell. It was Steve Renell. Not gonna.
Okay, good to know. Well, that's interesting in and of itself.
Yeah. He's gained a lot of speed now, but 5 years ago, he wasn't as cool yet. So I like to think it was kind of more underground then, but it was Steve Renell when I heard about it.
But quick side story. I recently got to eat the tenderloin of the oryx that Steve Renell has shot the last couple of weeks.
Doug hooked up too. It was from Doug, wasn't it?
What?
They're from Doug?
Nope. It was our friends Carl and Shoshana came over because they're
Carl. I just saw Carl posted that. Okay, yeah. Never mind.
So yeah. And the oryx was interesting. It was cooked very tenderly, but you could definitely tell it was sagebrushy. So it was just kind of an interesting. I usually like all sorts of wild meat, but that one was a little bit different. So
antelope.
No, and it was like not as tender as antelope. I don't think it was. Antelope usually is like butter, but so yeah, that was interesting. But so good to know. And so were you just kind of seeing the R3 programs that Lucas and the rest of the board were conducting? And is that how you found out about R3 in general, or was it a different method?
So R3, I actually didn't know a lot about it ahead of time. And when I joined BHA, Lucas was working through the UW chapter and involved in the Badger Hunt Club, and then they started doing Learn to Turkey hunts, and I bumped into John Motovilov, and so he was still working for the DNR at the time, and I had an opportunity, him and actually Keith Warnicki. So Keith Warnicki was my first Learn to Hunt, was with him as a mentor, and it was just something I didn't have any exposure to growing up north, and so I basically said any opportunity I can get, I want to do, and then I found out that basically they were looking for people to do these things. So that's when Lucas and I said, well, we should do something through BHA. So we'd always give volunteers to be mentors, but we wanted to start our own program. And that's when we started our Learn to Boat Hunt program. And that was a BHA sponsored program through Blackhawk Archers. And that was really when I really got excited about it, because it went from like kind of what we talked about prior to this is, you do the mentored hunts, you show up, you help them, and it's over. The Learn to Bow Hunt was like 6 or 7 weeknights that we got to get to know these people. There was an hour of shooting because we want to make sure they're proficient, but then we also had an hour of a lesson of some sort. So whether we had a DNR biologist come out and talk about DNR biology, or we brought somebody out to teach tree stand safety, or we talked about what gear you needed, because right now in this day and age with all the opportunities on the internet, you could buy enough gear to last you a lifetime, but we wanted to show them what you actually needed. Like, here's what you need to actually hunt, like very little. And so to do those little classes and stuff and get to know the folks that are in the program, by the time the hunt weekend rolled around, I mean, it was a good like hunt camp. We tent camped, and it was a blast, and it was like a hunt camp. And I still keep in touch with the majority of those people, not even just my mentees, but also other people from the program. And, I've had questions come in via text of, hey, I'm looking to buy a new release. What should I get? Or, hey, I'm looking at this property. What do you think? And, I'm there as a sounding board or a reference point for them at that point. Cause I don't think in a weekend you can build that relationship with someone where they feel comfortable texting or calling or emailing. But I don't know. I've had very good luck with people coming back to me asking for advice or even meeting up. So yeah, I thought that was probably the most impactful part of the mentoring program. And so from there, we just moved forward and decided that BHA was going to try to take a different model of the R3 mentoring. And, we focus on the hunting for sustainability, but also that follow-up, whether that means we invite them, if they do a turkey hunt, we invite them back for a deer hunt. Or if they'll learn to bow hunt, if they're in a rifle hunt, we ask, are you interested in bow hunting, and try to get them to learn to bow hunt. So we try to keep building on those few people. But yeah, and I just got really excited about it. So.
All right, Joe, here's my first technical R3 question for you. How does BHA's method of R3 line up with the outdoor recreation adoption model? And our listeners will know what the outdoor recreation adoption model is from a previous episode.
This is so BS. Well, I can honestly tell you, I don't know what that is. So I feel horrible because now I said only softballs. Gee.
I gave you like 3 softballs. No, I'm just kidding. The outdoor recreation adoption model is going back to that just whole process of getting somebody addicted to something. So they first become aware of it, and then they try it out, and then through peer pressure and social support, they want to keep coming back and having a good time and stick with it. So I think that's exactly the model that you described for BHA is just getting them into something, developing the relationship with people coming through the programs, and then just asking them if they want to come back and do more. So that's perfect. And I've really enjoyed working with Wisconsin BHA because you guys just get it. You intuitively get it. And Kelly had mentioned what a lot of R3 programs started out as. So Kelly, do you want to talk more about the history of the Learn to Hunt program and kind of how you have seen it evolve so far?
In my limited experience with the Learn to Hunt program, yeah, I mean, it's no secret that a lot of the original Learn to Hunt activities over the years have involved sort of a one and done exposure, of like a blitz of an exposure. You get a couple days with a person to expose them to a type of hunting technique. You go and do it with them, and then that might be the end of your mentor-mentee relationship with that person. They might not receive any more guidance or help. They might not get any more access to equipment. And the data that we do have shows that that is not necessarily a very effective way to get people recruited into hunting or fishing or whatever the activity may be in the outdoors. And so, as Joe was saying, there's been this evolution where we realize that these mentor-mentee relationships need to last much longer than the initial exposure. And just like any of us that were exposed to hunting, fishing, whatever it may be at an early age, generally we were mentored by an adult for quite some time. As we were growing up as kids, we were mentored. And so by the time we reached an adult age, we were pretty comfortable with what we were trying to do. And we sort of forget that that's still a similar experience for people who are just starting hunting. Even if they're just starting as an adult, they still want some guidance for quite some time, just to become completely comfortable with doing it independently. And our R3 methods of recruitment should probably reflect that type of experience.
All right, I have to add to that, because I got a fastball, which I didn't know, but I didn't know what it was, but we're still doing it, so that's good.
Yes.
So
technical
to accompany the inviting them back to different hunts, one of the things we did this year that we started, and Tom Olson and I thought this would be a good idea this year, was we ran the class like normal. We did all of that, but then we also, the potluck, the camaraderie of the camp, but then we said we wanted to do a follow-up because we wanted to keep those people engaged. So what we did was I don't know if you're familiar in the Madison area, but we have a brewery called Delta Beer Lab. It's a really cool beer lab, and they stand for a lot of good things. And if you haven't, listeners, look it up. Good place. We held a pint night there highlighting the mentees. So our goal then was to get these mentees to show up and let them tell their stories to a bunch of veteran hunters. You know what I mean? Like let those hunters that have been doing it their whole lives hear what it's like from a firsthand experience. And I would say we got over half of the folks that participated in our Learn to Bow Hunt to show up to that. And the turnout was great. And that, I felt, built a lot of camaraderie, and it allowed them to also network and realize that the group of the hunters isn't that intimidating, and really they do want to see people succeed. And that was pretty cool. And actually, I don't want to waste too much time, but I have another really cool story. So our first Learn to Bow Hunt, I won't mention his name, but he was a transplant from Georgia, and he said that he had never bow hunted before. He was super excited, wanted to get involved, and he went through our Learn to Bow Hunt program, loved it, wasn't successful. Our Learn to Bow Hunt program, it's tough to be successful, and everybody was very appreciative of the process. And those of you who don't know what I do, I work in law enforcement. So I was working in the police academy teaching, and one of the students comes up to me. He's like, "Do you remember me?" And I'm like, and he says, "I did your Learn to Bow Hunt course." And he goes, "I want to tell you, I got my first deer this year. Finally got one with a bow on public land." And he told me, and I was ecstatic, and I mean, it was a really cool experience, and I felt horrible. And granted, this was during COVID, so we're wearing masks. I'm not that bad at remembering people, but he's like, "Do you remember me? Do you remember?" And I'm like, and so it was kind of cool. So I got to see him graduate the police academy, and then he gave me his number, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm in the area. We should go hunting sometime." And, I really want to thank you for how cool that class was. I think he was from Georgia, and he's like, we never had anything like that where I came from. So that was probably my coolest R3 story. And I definitely Reader's Digest version that, but definitely the most impactful, and it makes me really passionate about pushing forward, because, it was 2 years ago, and he just got his first deer on public land with his bow, but he was just jacked. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Those are the best stories to hear. Like every once in a while we'll get little emails or long emails because people are so excited that, just like how amazing either the class experience was or how actually going hunting with some of the instructors and mentors was for them. Or, I mean, sometimes it's years later, like your experience, and people just reach back out and say, I've been continuing to do this and finally been successful, or they had some sort of experience where it really made an impact on them. And that's one of the things I like most about the job, I think, is just hearing from people connecting to nature or being able to accomplish something challenging, and just the whole acknowledging the process. I think that's always really special. One of the things that we've talked a lot about and Kelly touched on quite a bit is just like the mentoring experience. And so Joe really loved mentoring people and he loved staying in touch with them. And Kelly kind of mentioned how when the Learn to Hunt program first started, it was usually like a weekend long program, one and done type thing. It's really hard to develop relationships with people who are new. And so I kind of wanted to open it up to discussion for what is mentoring, why do some people love it, and why is it so hard for others? And I know that I'm a lot more of an introvert, and luckily for me, I kind of get to run the programs, and so I can, that's what I do for my job, so I've got lots of time to do it. But a lot of the things that I hear from people are that it's just a really big time commitment for them. And being an introvert, I can understand that sometimes it's really hard to give up that time to somebody who comes in, they don't have any experience, they're trying something out for the first time, and you don't really know whether they're committed or not. And so I think it can be equally as emotional on the other end of the spectrum to bring somebody into something that you love so much and then feeling a loss after they're either decide they're not interested or they don't tend to come back and return. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit too, because I know that's definitely something that comes up and that we're always trying to work on in my daily grind and figure out how can we best link people up so that it's a positive experience and relationship for everybody, and that their novices are interested in trying hunting and the mentors are able to feel rewarded when they're giving their time. So any thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, on our end, I mean, we're pretty selective of who we pick as mentors. And I realize from a statewide standpoint, you can't have that. I mean, you have these areas all over the state where if you get volunteers, you need to take them because that's what you're getting. And with BHA, when we do our mentor programs, it's not that we like interview them, but even when I started doing some of the hunter safety stuff, like some of the instructors I felt maybe weren't giving the best message or like weren't good fits for that. And not even necessarily taking introvert, extrovert out of it. Just if you're not going to be able to engage with them and you're not going to, if it's going to be awkward for you, it's going to be really awkward for the mentor because they're the ones that are, I mean, I guess the victim in this, they're the ones that are putting themselves out there. So if you put them with somebody who's going to be, maybe not as receptive to questions. And so I think it's really important that you pick the right people for it if you have that option. And so with BHA, we've been really lucky for our mentors, for our learn to bow hunt and stuff like that. Like we cherry pick them. I mean, we borderline turn people away now, like, cause we know we want the right folks in there. And I think that makes a world of difference. And I can honestly say of all of the, I don't know how many people I personally mentored, but even just running the program, how many people have reached out to me after having somebody who's willing to be receptive, even if it's just an email or a response. Some people, I don't know if they hunt anymore, but they'll ask me, hey, I've been doing camping now. What headlamps are good, and I've gotten these emails from these folks just because they know I'm in the outdoors. But I also come across as a person where during that, even if it is just that weekend, because I did a lot of just those weekend ones, and they were comfortable reaching out to me after. But I also said, don't be afraid. Here's my number. Don't be afraid, and I think that's key. Quality over quantity sometimes is just making sure you have the right folks there if you can.
Something, Ryan, don't mean to call you out, buddy, but that you brought up early on, I think maybe it was during our first or second episode, that resonated with me was you said as you're thinking about bringing out your kids, it brings on a little bit, you feel compelled to do the work to scout and put them in a position to get an animal. And I know that I've definitely felt that way when I've been asked to mentor, that the stress of it is really overwhelming. And I think maybe particularly as a woman, because you already struggle with some imposter syndrome in the hunting space. So to think that you can be smart enough or good enough of a hunter to take somebody out is really, it can be stressful and a bit overwhelming. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm a confident hunter as an individual, but thinking about taking somebody else out is a whole nother game. That being said, every time I have done it, it's been super rewarding, whether it was a family member or somebody I didn't know. And almost every time it was always about way more than whatever we were pursuing. It was about whatever conversations we had along the way. And so I would encourage anybody to think about it that way, as much as I still catch myself thinking this is stressful. I don't know if I'm going to be good enough to mentor this person and put them in a position to be successful. There's got to be some other person who can do a better job than me. But that is probably not the best way to look at it. Surely it's not the best way to look at it. So, and really, especially with the adults, even with the kids, but especially with the adults, they're just looking for an experience. I mean, if they're really out there thinking all they want to get out of it is a harvest, then they probably won't stick anyway. And that's not your fault as a mentor. So yeah, to circle back, like to what you said, Ryan, back in a previous episode, I think that is a big holdup for a lot of us, is that we feel this level of pressure to that harvest will lead to immediate recruitment and retention. And that is not necessarily true. And it might not be what we actually want to get by recruiting hunters anyway. That might not be the precedent we want to set. But I totally get where that stress comes from.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off that a little bit. So, I mean, I haven't done really any mentor work as far as taking new hunters out. It just kind of made me think about a good friend of mine who's always bow hunted, fished, the works. Never turkey hunted before. So I volunteered. I said, get a tag. We'll go. We'll see what happens. For him, like, he knows the struggles of hunting. You're not going to get something every time you go out. So it was nice to have that kind of in place before dealing with, somebody who's brand new to it. But I took him out on just an absolutely terrible day. I mean, it poured on us from the time we were out there. I was like, yeah, we'll sit under these pine trees. And I missed the pine trees by about 30 yards. So we got soaked and heard a couple gobbles. And it was easy for me just to say, well, just like sitting in a deer stand, can't draw it up any better, I guess. Right. Didn't see anything. But yeah, I just feel like it's got to be such a harder transition for somebody who's not used to doing things like that, and kind of suffering, if you will, sitting in the woods and being cold and being uncomfortable. So the one thing that I think about when I think about who we're using as mentors is there's a lot of really bad coaches out there. So it's nice that there's some process to kind of come up with the best people to do the job. And it's probably not easy. So I don't envy what you have to do, Joe, to find the right folks for that. But it's good to know that there's some out there.
Well, and to kind of go off that, I'd rather take a newer hunter that isn't as educated, but has the passion and has the ability to communicate, and use that person, because you may have a veteran hunter that knows everything there is to know, but if they're not going to engage with that person, you're not gaining anything. And when you look for a mentor in a student relationship, you're looking for there's two things that mentor is going to get from that. You're going to want to build camaraderie or build that relationship and trust. And then you're also going to have that teaching aspect. And you have to remember, these folks are coming in with no experience. So even if you feel you don't have a lot of knowledge, you have a lot more than they do. And what I've learned over the years is that teaching, or just when people are asking you questions and you can answer them, the more and more that happens, the better you become at whatever you're doing. You're just going to become a better hunter because you don't realize everything that you've just always taught. So when they're asking you these questions, the more you teach, the better you're going to get at it. So I would rather take a 3 or 4 year hunter who has limited but some knowledge and put them with somebody brand new than take the 30-year vet who's like, quit moving and you got to be quiet and don't talk in the blind.
Stuck in his ways.
Yeah, and that's just what it is. And the camaraderie, the teaching moments, that's what you're going for. I think that I noticed that the bow hunt versus the gun hunt, when you talked about kill success, I mean, that's a lot of stress on mentors out the gates, especially when you're doing a weekend turkey or deer hunt, the rifle. It's like, if you don't shoot something, you fail as a mentor. I think that's why we've had more retention and more engagement in our bow, because we set the expectation. The odds of you shooting something is not good, and we'll shoot 2 deer and everybody gets together to butcher those deer. The stories run rampant. They've built that relationship over the couple of weeks, and it's just a way cooler experience than doing like a weekend gun or turkey hunt, where sometimes it's a pressure on the mentor, and also it's an expectation of the mentee sometimes during that. It's like, well, we're going to go shoot something, and when you have the time to build and work in like our Learn to Bow Hunt class, it does, I feel, builds more of a lifelong hunter versus that I want to dabble in this. If that's worth it.
I like that you kind of mentioned that you would take somebody who doesn't have quite the experience. And I mean, when you talk about this program, I guess there's kind of 2 ways to look at it. I could see like college kids being really good at doing this. But at the same time, I could also see a lot of older people. I mean, people who are in their 40s and 50s, potentially, they're just getting into it. I could see them to a certain degree just having a hard time taking people seriously. Well, why am I going to listen to this 20-year-old kid when, like you said, he doesn't have a ton of experience? And I guess I'm just looking at it from both sides of the coin. But initially, when you kind of mentioned the not most experienced hunters, I mean, I thought perfect opportunity for college kids to get some type of college credit to go out and help some people.
Yeah, and really the reality is, you got to remember though, you're going into something that you don't know what you're doing. The people we're dealing with have no clue. I mean, they're starting from ground zero most of the time. So that person with little no experience sounds like a genius to them because they have zero experience. You know what I mean though? Like it's a different. It'd be like me saying, "Hey, I want to learn how to work on my car. I have no clue," and I go to a college kid who's been doing it since he was 16, and I'm like, "Oh, this makes total sense. Oh, that's what that does. Oh, and it's like, you don't need a 30 years, decades worth of knowledge. You just need enough to get them out in the woods and understanding basics. And anybody, like if you take somebody, for example, like I started hunting when I was 12 and I grew up north. And by the time I hit college, and especially right out of college, I mean, I have 10 years of hunting under my belt. I'm 22 years old. Granted, a lot of that was as a young adult, but the things that I take for granted, knowing these people have no clue, you know what I mean? So I think that, some of the best learners we had people in their 50s that are asking these questions of 20-year-olds. And I've never gotten that response of like, "Oh, what do you know? You're just a kid," because they're going into it completely blind. They don't know,
And I'm assuming they're there because they want to be there too. So that probably makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah. I mean, and it's an effort to sign up for these programs. It's a commitment. Our Learn to Bow Hunt, we're saying you need to be here 6-7 weeks and every week, and so it's a commitment. And even the ones with the weekend hunts, I mean, we're asking for a commitment, and it's not, you don't pay anything. I mean, for our programs, you don't pay anything. Other programs, I know you do have to pay, So there's no financial commitment, but there's a time commitment, and this day and age, people's time is valuable. So if they're getting involved in this, they want to learn,
Go ahead, Bill.
I was so similar to Ryan, I've never formally done a mentored anything for hunting. The last few years,
you both will.
Well,
we're changing that.
So here's the stick of it. After talking to Joe last year at the rendezvous, just listening to kind of his stories on the Learn to Bow Hunt, I'm like, that sounds awesome. I love everyone that lives in the Madison area, but there's no way I'm traveling down there. I love Point too much, and central northern Wisconsin. I'll go down there to kill pheasants and then come back north, but that's about it. I'll show up, I'll kill the pheasants that I'll work around the people that are already down there and kill all the birds, and then come back north. But I had reached out to Peggy Farrell for becoming an outdoorswoman, and that was talking to a friend of mine and learning about that program. I wanted that to be like, if I was going to learn how to actually properly mentor someone, I wanted to learn from Peggy, from that program, because it's been around forever, and she's awesome, and I love the program. So that was supposed to be this spring turkey hunt, and I was like all fired up. I had my extra copy of Jim Posowitz. I had like all this extra outdoor stuff. I was just gonna like vomit on this person, all this extra stuff I had, but COVID just punched me in the throat. So here we are. Didn't get to do that. Turkey hunt got canceled, so that was a bummer, because we kind of talked about coaching, community sharing, the future. I love so much that the idea of vetting out potential people we're taking out, because I think we're going to dive into this with more talk about the future of R3, but as hunters, hunting's on the decline, right? Like Wisconsin, we don't see it as much, I think, because of just how strong hunting is to the history of Wisconsin, but it's on the decline, and we need to be selective of the people that we're sharing this with. I feel, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying it's important, because then we know that it's going to be valued. It's going to be kind of supported and understood. If the people that are really buying in and they love it, it becomes part of their identity. The relevancy that we're going to be talking about, it's relevant to who they are, to their understanding of who they are as a person. So this idea of hunting, right? It becomes them. It's not just something they do for 9 days in the fall. It's not just that thing they do. They buy their license and they go do it for a weekend. It's who they are. It's why they live. It's part of them. I think that's super important as we go into the future and look at what conservation is, because there are a lot of outdoor recreation users and groups that look at hunting and they see the stereotypes that we're all familiar with. Ryan and I have had many conversations about this. The things we saw growing up, the things we see now from some of our peers that we're frustrated with. We don't want to see that continue, right? Or if someone from one of these other user groups sees that, they're like, that's hunting right there. We need to shut that down. Whereas if they see someone coming out of your program, that's a hunter, right? Someone that values it, that's super appreciative, that loves the connection of the outdoor space into their lives. When a non-hunter sees that person, they have a completely different viewing of it, and they're like, oh yeah, hunting has a place. It has a place in the outdoor space, and we want to listen to them. We want to hear their stories. We want to maybe go hunting with them, even if we're not interested in the take. I know Kelly's been huge on that through this whole series, is getting people out, and it's not about the take. I took people out last year informally, people that had never hunted, that wanted to learn more, and then even a friend of mine who had never bow hunted on public land, right? Like he'd only bow hunted on private. So I'm like, well, you've bow hunted, you just go out on do the same thing but on public land, right? I'm like, to me it's like it's not that big of a deal, and to him it's like, well, you don't have lanes. Where am I supposed to sit? Where I'm like, you just wander around the woods until you see deer sign, and then you're like, well, I'll ambush there. Like I'm like, I don't know, but those little things that all of us we take for granted, and like you've been saying with the coaching, or when you actually mentor someone, you realize it, and all those things you take for granted, and it makes you a better hunter, selfishly, but it also makes you a better spokesperson for the tradition. So I'm fired up. I plan on being a legitimate mentor here in the future. If
not planning, you're going to be.
Yeah, I will be. If
sure you know that, like, that's not an option. That was my agreement for coming on here. For the World Wide Web out there, Bill agreed that if I came on and talked, that he would be a mentor every year until he was no longer a card-carrying member of BHA. So just for the record.
You have a lifetime membership, right, Bill?
So do I. So it looks like we're lifers.
Well, it looks like we're in this together forever. So that was my spiel after listening to like all of these things that just speak to me. Like if we're gonna keep this going, if we're gonna grow it in a regenerative way, I think all of us know these things that we see in the hunting space. We're like, oh, why has that been accepted? We don't want to see that happen. I want to hide that somewhere, and I never want anyone to see that doesn't hunt, right? Because that paints a terrible picture for the rest of us. So if we can support future hunters, current hunters in a regenerative way like this. Before the podcast, I think it was Emily or Kelly were talking about, it's not a utilitarian viewpoint of outdoor space. I forget the word you used, but it hit me. I'm like, yes, we need to view hunting. I forget what word you used. I think it was Emily. But we need to view hunting in the outdoor space as more of this like symbiotic relationship, and how it's all interconnected. It's not just about the take. So I'm in.
Totally agree.
Whatever you need, Joe. I'm just not coming down to Madison.
Oh, you got to get your feet wet somewhere, Bill. I gotta test you out. I gotta take you for a test drive. Make sure you're adequate. I gotta vet you, man. You know the rules.
That's all right. That's fair. Can we just do like a learn to pheasant hunt this fall? I'd be down for that. Figure something out, because it's socially distant. I don't need to like,
Unfortunately, right now in Dane County, there's no mentored hunts.
Dang it.
You can call it the BHA Bill Kopke inaugural pheasant hunt.
There we go. I like it. I'm down for that. We can all wear masks. We can be 30 feet apart, and we just drive the birds. Winning.
What I want to comment on your, the image thing. I mean, it's funny because it's a conversation that gets had in every realm of any type of position, any type of role. I mean, you can correlate that whole image thing of what you're portraying and what you want the image of your social group to be. So us as hunters, we don't, I guess you have different social groups of it, but even when we do our learn to bull hunts, we'll give them links to good like YouTube, like the Hunting Public, or we'll say, watch Steve Ranella. You don't want to go on record saying like, don't watch the Outdoor Channel, don't watch the Drurys, don't watch Lee and Tiff, like we don't go outright and say that, but we also try to point them in the direction of more down to earth, more realistic, content, because right now people are hungry for content, especially right now with COVID. I mean, people are just consuming. So the more we can direct people into, like this podcast or things that are more, driven towards that type of message we want to portray and the image we want to portray as hunters, the better we're going to be. Because for years, I mean, Ted Nugent was the deer hunting model. I mean, now look at that. So, I mean, everything is cyclical. And I think right now we have an opportunity to, as hunters, push people to the right content. And eventually that other content will go away. But that was one other thing we do in the programs is we try to push people to the right content.
So this is a super interesting segue for me as a state R3 coordinator, just because, I mean, I obviously have the background of the adult onset hunter. I'm relatively young. I'm a woman. And so I meet all of these non-traditional, I check all these little non-traditional boxes, and definitely feel a strong connection to nature and the land ethic, and want to have that moralistic, mutualistic connection. But one of the things that I've really had to learn and think about a lot more and kind of outside the box is that, I mean, does that mean that all people who like Ted Nugent are worthless? Like, does that mean that all baby boomers who grew up hunting in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I mean, is that experience worth nothing? And that's completely wrong. Of course, that experience is worth just gold. And so one of the things that sometimes I've been thinking about this a lot lately too, is just how do we bridge those two? How do we bridge the more traditional values with newer values of nature? And I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think there's a lot more that kind of the old-timey hunters maybe don't quite let on. Like, I think most times you say, you know, a lot of people are out there and they'll sit and hunt until they can shoot their big buck. And so a lot of people would term that trophy hunting. And just coming into hunting from that perspective, trophy hunting was like, I don't want to hear anything about this. I'm not interested. I don't want to be around you. And that's not, I think there's a lot more to that kind of hunting than meets the eye with those kind of catchwords. And, you know, and just, it's easy to stereotype people. And so what I found is that a lot of those people just love hunting. Like, they love being out there. Like, they love seeing all the different animals walk by, and they just are willing to sit it out because they enjoy it. And Lucas is somebody who comes to mind for me, who he sits out there and waits until the big buck walks by. But that's completely doesn't mean that, you know, he's going to go out there for 5 minutes and find his big one and just quit after that. So I definitely think it's worth at least having a conversation or asking questions for people who may not seem like quite your style at the beginning. And that goes for both sides, whether you're, I don't know, kind of checking these boxes as a non-traditional hunter, and whether you grew up in a hunting family and you're out there on private land and, you know, you've got your goals. And one of the things I like to add on too is that a lot of people who shoot big bucks always eat them. It's not like they just throw them in the dumpster. So I think those are just perceptions that are easy to fall into. And one of the things that Bill was talking about was this idea of relevancy, and how can we keep hunting relevant for the future, and how can we keep conservation relevant for the future, and the state agency relevant for the future. And I really think that the answer to those questions lies in reaching out to different groups of people and making sure you're inclusive of everybody. So there's a lot that goes into that, though, if we want to unpack it a little bit.
Ooh, that's pretty heavy. No, and I think I should rephrase what I was saying. I think that I totally agree, because I mean, all my mentors were those folks. You know what I mean? My father is a prime example. He doesn't shoot small bucks, but you know, he waits till a big one. He likes being out in the woods, and I don't ever knock him for that. But I also know that we shoot multiple does and all that other stuff, and that's not even the point. The point is that he enjoys being out there. It's not about that. And what I guess when I was thinking of content, I was thinking of like, find content that's informative, I guess is a better way to put it. Find content that isn't just about the kill. And sometimes that is a highlight of some content. And I was more or less saying find content that's valuable to help you learn, because again, we're talking to new hunters. So there's a lot of content out there that is just highlighting somebody shooting a big buck. People film YouTube videos all year to get that one video to shooting their big buck. Whereas if you find some content that says like, hey, this is the deer sign I'm finding, here's why I'm hunting here, anything that can help inform you as a hunter, whether that be the methods of how you're going to get to that point, to the butchering, to the, the cooking portion of it.
Totally. And I wasn't knocking you for talking about the content. I totally agree. And like, I don't know.
Ted Nugent's people are calling me already. So, I'm screwed. So I've crossed the line.
Yeah, I guess just like a personal example, and I'm sort of putting myself on the line here because I'm going to sound like a little yuppie noob, but I don't know. I just never liked a lot of hunting shows, but I didn't like them, but I didn't really understand what they were doing when I was a new and novice hunter. And so like, I guess now that I've had more experience and I've kind of felt the different things, like the adrenaline of the shots and those things that a lot of that content features, like I can totally understand why those things focus on that stuff. And so I'm a lot more open-minded to those shows, but I think it's very important to just like underline the context of where those people are at and where society is at maybe. So I think, we're going to say this again, that hunting is declining. Participation in hunting is declining. And so there's a lot of reasons for that. And so maybe the content should change because the audience is changing. And so just like you can still have those kinds of shows, but also you need to have this new type of content and have it proportional to the people who are out there and watching too. So yeah, I've got lots of thoughts on hunting shows and
I'm gonna interrupt because Joe has a beer break. He needs to go grab a beer, and then hey, it's important to the show, Joe. It's okay. Don't be embarrassed. This is your first time on the show. We've all been there. We've all had to step out for a drink. So, and this is a great point. Content, the idea of content. This is going to be our segue into Joe goes blank, but Joe needs to go get his beer right now. That's where he's going right now. And it also gives us a chance. So while Joe's doing that, we'll fill in the break with a little teaser for next week. The idea of content. So before you leave, Joe, Kelly and her Lady Deer Camp are going to be on the regs for this next year's deer season. Am I correct, Kelly? Right?
I've been told that a group picture of ours is appearing in the regs. Yes.
Excellent. So while you're gone, Joe, we're gonna just touch on that for a bit, and then when you come back, we can dive into Joe Goes, and then Emily can walk us through content and relevancy as we go through that. How does that sound?
Well, it's such a teaser because I want to hear this. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, you're gonna have to listen to the podcast. You're gonna have to watch over again. It's all about the views. Like Anthony posted today, it's all about the views. I just want you to come back and watch the whole thing. I'll send you. I'll post the timestamp. All right. So Joe's grabbing his beer. Kelly, Lady Deer Camp content, like this idea of hunting's changing. You and I have had great conversations about this. Just deer camp in general. Let's do a little teaser right now. Commercial break.
What's interesting to me about deer camp and this idea of Lady Deer Camp is that the group of people that I convinced to do something like this was I really wanted to get back to the core values of what it means to have deer camp. And to me, those core values are what will maintain relevancy, in that we are building community by coming together around an activity, which is hunting, but that's just one aspect of what we find value in by coming together for deer camp. we also felt like we weren't necessarily being equally invited into the deer camp world as women. And there's lots of reasons why that would be. And some people might turn around and say, well, you're being hypocritical if you just have a lady deer camp and when you're not being invited to the guys deer camp. And my response to that would be, if it's not an equally inviting arena, then I have to go find, we had to go find this outlet. And that sort of just reflects where we're at in the culture of hunting right now. And that at some point, I think we will move well past. And maybe we won't have lady deer camp, maybe we will. But we're at its core, it's about building a community of people who like to come together around an activity. But the activity that you come around is just one aspect of the community. But it's important to remember, though, and to reflect on that hunting is still the activity. And I'm not sure we would be getting together if we didn't have hunting as the activity. It's the foundational thing that brings us together, but it leads to all of these other things. And again, that is what will continue to make us relevant in society. You're coming together to hunt. Therefore we need to have hunting available and relevant as a worthwhile activity. But there's so much more than that that will keep us coming back to this activity of hunting, and it's at the core our community. So I'm excited to hear what Sarah has to contribute on it, and just why doing things as groups of women is really important to build that community, and why building groups of women is relevant. Is that a good enough teaser for you, Bill?
You crushed it. Yes. I'm fired up for next week. Joe, I'll send you the timestamp so you can just listen to what Kelly was talking about. It's in a little teaser for next week. So we've got Sarah Top from Artemis Sportswomen Women coming on the podcast, and we're going to talk about Lady Deer Camp. Ryan and I are going to get educated, and I'm excited. Anyways, thank you, Kelly.
To say, I'll reiterate, our deer camp for our Learn to Bow Hunt is by far the best part. I mean, honestly, and I think everybody from the program will admit that. And it's basically is awesome because you're doing deer camp in like late September, early October. So the weather's great. It's perfect camping weather. We grill out every night, campfires every night. So that's probably the highlight, 2 or 3 nights of that in our deer camp for our Learn to Bow Hunt. And it's a mix. I mean, our deer camp has consisted of, such a different demographic than like you're talking about. I grew up, hunting in deer camp way up in, on the border of Michigan. We hunted Mercer and big public land tracts my whole life. And it was all the guys went up north. And so our deer camps that Learn to Bow Hunt, we have men, women. I mean, we had our first transgender mentee this year. We have, different everything, Hispanic, African Americans. Like we've had so many different demographics in our deer camps. It just brings such a different, I guess, feel to it. And it's more fun because there's so many more people. Like I found that, we did a social media thing this year trying to push like deer camp pics, and deer camps are on decline overall. These deer camps are dissolving, period. The deer camps of when I was a kid where you'd have 12 to 15 people are now 5 or 3. And it's like these deer camps keep getting smaller. And I think bringing that camaraderie back and bringing the nostalgia and the awesomeness of a deer camp is important. And maybe that's going to be the new trend of these new deer camps are going to be a little more, friends and family versus, some of it has to do with family traditions, and then a lot of it has to do with access, I'm going to be honest, a lot of it has to do with, access. And that's why it was a lot of times kept within families. But I do like the idea of the expanding deer camps.
I like it. All right, Joe, give us because we're over an hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. quick and dirty of the Joe Go series. I love that you have in there that your hook and line got tangled, because that is a huge part of fishing that does not get covered in traditional content. So the quick and dirty of that, and then Emily is going to just tear you apart. No, I'm just kidding. All right, go.
Is that what I did earlier?
No, not at all. But I mean, we're talking about content, right? The only way to get better is through critique and feedback.
Yes.
And I think you do a great job of that. So here we are.
So we're doing a Joe Go series, which again is going to be kind of like an exploratory version of crash courses into things that might be a little intimidating to entry, or that have barriers or people think have barriers. And we're trying to make it more easy and understanding in the world of COVID, when we have to do things virtually. We thought that a video series would be pretty cool. So we started with the trout fishing, and Joe Go's trout fishing part 2 drops Thursday night. So tomorrow night we'll drop on Facebook and YouTube. And then we're starting filming next week on our next series, or our next adventure. And we're going to try to run them all summer. So we're hoping that we're going to get at least 6 different types of things leading into hunting season. Hopefully do some hunting stuff too. We're hoping to squeeze in a foraging thing. Right now is not the ideal time. We're hoping maybe some berries coming up, and then looking for mushrooms after a rain. But we're hoping to do a butchering session, and then like kind of a cook-off of venison. And so we have some things docketed, but really the whole purpose of it is we want to keep it under 10 minutes, each video under 10 minutes. We're hoping that it'll give quick, easy content and kind of demystify some of the things that maybe people were not aware of. So either bring awareness to it, or also we're intimidated by it. So we're going to be picking things that aren't necessarily normal per se. So not things that maybe the average person trying to get in the outdoors wouldn't know what to do. And I can tell you from experience that learning to trout fish was extremely difficult, and my adult attention deficit took hold immediately when trying to read the regs and understanding the different.
I learned so much in that first segment. I had no idea that the trout streams were different colors because of the different regulations.
Crazy.
I thought you made that part up. I was like, that's not real. And then I went and read it. And I was like, oh yeah, it's real. I didn't read it.
Yep. So me being, I'd like to think a pretty regular hunter and fisher, was totally taken aback when I decided to start trout fishing in the regulations. And if I was intimidated, and I've been involved in hunting and fishing my whole life, I could only imagine somebody wanting to get involved. So again, demystifying it, or making it, removing that barrier to entry, that was our goal. So, and we want to keep it lighthearted and more conversational, not like your typical like tutorial type videos. And I'm an amateur. I have not been in Hollywood. I have no contracts. This is all pro bono. So regardless, it's not going to be that amazing, but I do want it to be genuine, and hopefully folks will take something away from it. And that's why we're keeping it short. But yeah, so stay tuned. Tomorrow night, Thursday night. Well, this won't be out. So go back and find this on YouTube, on the BHA YouTube channel in Wisconsin, and watch Joe Goes Fishing Part 2. If you haven't seen Part 1, watch that too. Part 2 is going to be more exciting, though. Stay tuned.
Can you tell us if you caught a fish in Part 2? I can't wait until Thursday.
I did catch fish. So, yes, there is some fish. And there's, and we're even, I don't want to spoil it too much, but we're offering up some recipes too. We'll show you some recipes for trout too. So that's going to be another caveat to every video. Whatever we're going to forage or catch or kill, we're going to give recipes and different ideas on how to cook it and show what it looks like when we do it. So
sweet.
There you have it.
Emily, so we've got the content right there, the idea of what we're going forward with. You live in you live in this world, right? Like, how do we get people addicted? How do we get people coming back, investing their money into it? What are some thoughts going into the rest of summer and fall where you think where Joe and his team could navigate this?
Coming from my very low technology IQ, I've always been suspicious of virtual content because I just don't watch videos, but I did watch Joe's video, as you can tell, because I learned something. And I think for a lot of people, like, they're kind of just inundated with all this stuff. Like, people are always getting links in newsletters and hoping for clicks, and you hear a lot about how they only have a 30-second attention span, if that. And so for me, I clicked on Joe's link, Joe Goes Fishing Part 1, because I know Joe and he's hilarious. And so I had high expectations for this video, and
I like how you said you had high expectations. Thank you for that.
I didn't say whether they were met or not. I'm not going to tell. But I mean, I think it always comes back to the relationship building. What's the spirit of the group that's putting these things out there? Is it going to be something that people can make a connection with? And so for me, Joe and BHA, everybody on this podcast, I have a vested interest in them. And so that's why I like seeing what they're up to and what they're doing, and whether your fishing line got tangled or not, and whether you got fish. So, and it's just like a way for me to link back and say, hey, I saw this and I thought it was awesome and I learned something. So I think that the more we can put the general spirit of different groups out there, and the more we can show that we mean well, we're welcoming, and we like to have fun, I think that's going to be the ticket.
Awesome.
Boom.
And it did meet my high expectations.
Victory! That was all. I mean, that's all I needed at this point. It doesn't matter.
Right. And
Emily's approval.
Sign off. Done.
Yeah.
So with, once again, just being respectful, everyone's time this evening. I know before the podcast, we talked about, Ryan had mentioned kind of and Kelly had talked about turkey hunting, right? Like Western hunting, we're hearing more and more of it. This huge boom of people going out there, certain zones or areas. If I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, it's because I've never done Western hunting. I love Wisconsin too much. There's too many people out there. And then here in Wisconsin, some areas of public land for turkey hunting, like Kelly said, we're crawling all over each other. So I think we're doing a better job of cross-promoting hunting, right? Like people who are already hunting or fishing, we're getting the awareness out there. How do we build the cross-training of the intro level? If that question makes sense. I'm going to throw it to Ryan and Kelly to kind of dive into that deeper as maybe a last question for you, Joe, and then anything else they have to throw at you.
I'll jump on it real quick. So I new hunters, that's the toughest part is just getting them to, I guess, dive in with both feet or head first, however you want to say it. And I think it would be, and this has always been my philosophy for my son, is he's 8, he's going to be 8. I'll gladly take him on a turkey hunt. And that's birds is kind of, I guess, the entry level animal. I know that's probably a terrible thing to say, but that's always kind of been my viewpoint. I mean, taking a white-tailed deer is, I mean, that's a lot. And I don't know if, especially the way that the regulations have changed now, where you don't have to be 12 anymore. 12 was when I started. And I remember when I was 12, when I shot my first deer, like that's a pretty heavy moment for a 12-year-old. And I think there's better ways to get people involved than just go straight to, all right, let's go kill a deer. Like, I don't think that that's realistic for a lot of people to just jump in and say, hey, that's where I'm going to go. That's what I'm going to do. If they want to, that's one thing. But I think if there's not a program for, like Bill said, take them out for a pheasant hunt. That's something completely different in my mind versus going out, sitting in a tree stand and having an opportunity to take a whitetail deer. I mean, even fishing, like you're still taking a life. And I think that weighs heavy on some people. And until they, I guess, experience it, then there's really no moving up that ladder, in my opinion. Like I said, I hate to kind of categorize these fish, birds, mammals, I hate to categorize them, but that's just, I guess, kind of the way that I look at it. And I think that would be a good place to start. Let's try to find some programs for some of these, I'm going to say something stupid, some of these lesser things, as opposed to just going out and taking a life of a 150-pound animal. Like they're two different things, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, those are good points. And I would say, well, and I can tell you right now, turkeys have been way more elusive to me than deer have. So I guess the other thing you got to realize too is you're taking someone who is inexperienced, and so like pheasants. I mean, you said you shot your first deer at 12. How old were you when you first shot your first pheasant? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That they're hard critters to get, and so I can relate to the idea. I think squirrel hunting is a good analogy, and squirrel hunting is something that you're in the woods, you're walking, you're sitting, you're being quiet. It has a lot of the same, I mean, especially early fall when there's still foliage, a squirrel hunt is almost like a deer hunt. You could treat it as a facsimile deer hunt. So you could take a new person out, sit them in the woods, sit on a bucket, sit on a stump, wait. It's going to be very similar to a deer. It's going to go a lot quicker. So there's going to have more of that instant gratification. You're going to have a smaller critter that may have not have the emotional impact. So I think squirrel hunting is a good mode of entry. Birds, I'm telling you, I don't know. Like, especially like, I know a lot of people say, well, what about ducks? It's like the process is what holds people back. And so pheasants, I mean, how many times have you gone pheasant hunting where you weren't with someone who knew what they were doing, had a dog? I mean, all these things are just more barriers to entry. Whereas I think deer hunting, small game, deer or squirrel and rabbit is something that anybody can do. And fishing is another one too. But yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from. I mean, taking a deer is a major impactful moment for a lot of people. I mean, it still is for me. And for how many I've taken, it's still an event, it's not, it doesn't go without thought. And so for that first thing to be that, I agree with you. And I think that there are other modes of entry, but I think now more days, people who are looking for hunting for sustainability and wanting to know where their meat comes from, you'd be surprised how many more people are okay with it. But like I said, the birds are tricky. I'm telling you, like
I like the idea of a squirrel hunt because like you said, you can use it as almost a deer hunt, and you have the opportunity to say, hey, do you see that game trail? See this rub, this scrape? I mean, you have that opportunity, especially in the fall time. So
there's so many threads that you guys are all bringing up. I think as a parting message, what I would connect them as is when we're thinking about building experiences to recruit and retain hunters, a huge component of that, which is near and dear to BHA's heart, is access. And it's access on public lands, and especially in the Midwest, it's access on private lands. And I do feel really bad for people who are just getting into hunting now that don't have this huge legacy of having a generation of private land access that I was really lucky to have. Like without that, I don't know what kind of hunting I would be doing right now, especially for deer, for things that have become super competitive and lucrative. It's just so much harder to get that quick type of access. And of course there's public land opportunities, but even still, and what we were talking about a little bit before the episode was that, we do have in the southern part of the state a limited amount of acres to put these people on. I can imagine how frustrating it would be to somebody who's pretty new to try to find a spot where they get some solitude, where they feel like they have a reasonable chance. Those are hard things for a new hunter. It's a hard thing for a veteran hunter. So when we build these opportunities, we need to think about their short-term and essentially their long-term access to land to pursue game, especially for kind of the big drivers of hunting in the state, whitetails and turkeys. And you can disagree with me if you live up north. You guys have other opportunities, but down here it's whitetails and turkeys, right? And so what both Ryan and Joe brought up is that if we build those opportunities around things where access is not as cumbersome, like pheasants, like squirrels, like things where you don't have to feel like you need to find a really unique spot on public land, and it may even be easy for you to get access on private land to do those activities. Those are sort of the gateway drugs that Emily's talked about. And perhaps we should be focusing more on those than sort of the sexy, deer hunting, social media driven types of hunting activities, because those are really hard for people to get into. And a lot of it comes down to access, and BHA is all about access. So as much as we can be thinking about those things as an organization, as we build these opportunities, that's going to make us a lot more successful in the R3 world.
Yeah. And growing up, like I mentioned before, like I spent my first probably, 12 years hunting big woods, public land up in Mercer. And there would be seasons where I didn't see deer, but there was more public land than I knew what to do with. And we could take our climbers and go and go and go. And so my hunting was introduced in public land. So I feel like I was at the advantage, because when I went away to college, like it wasn't intimidating for me to be like, oh, hey, look at this. And this was back the day where I would go pay the $35 for the plat book to find out, and I would go knock and talk, and that's one thing that I think it's kind of like, is almost frowned upon now, where people aren't comfortable doing those things. And I can tell you right now, if you want, farmers hate turkeys. So if you want to turkey hunt, start knock and talking and you'll get permission. Okay. So I've done that, and it's not that bad. And if you wait, if you want to be the person that's saying, hey, I need a place for opening day rifle in Wisconsin, it's 100% true. You're not going to find that. But with all of the opportunities for antlerless tags and so on and so forth, there isn't barely any farmers that aren't looking to reduce the doe population. And if you go to a farmer in these more urban areas where you have less public access and you have that second season doe hunt, I mean, a lot of times I've gotten permission. Oh yeah, go ahead, shoot as many as you want, and that's an opportunity. I realize, again, it's not that romantic or that like, you're not going to shoot that big buck because you're not going in there to do that, but it's opportunities. And so I guess I've filled a lot of egg tags in my life. I've killed, like a multitude of does on properties that I would have never been able to get on had I not talked about turkey hunting and shooting does. So there are opportunities. But again, in Wisconsin, I will reiterate, the opening weekend is still like, you will not find a place to get permission. And on public land, it's probably going to be pretty busy. And that is kind of an intimidating factor, I guess. So, but like I said, those other smaller hunting opportunities, I think are huge and can get people hooked enough to where they'll get involved, and maybe they have a relative or whatever, and they get involved into the deer.
Boom. Emily, take us home. What do we want to wrap up with?
I think we covered a lot today. And my first thought is that I think hunting is such a passionate thing, it's an emotional thing, and so it's intrinsically very individualistic. So, and I think kind of going back to a discussion we had earlier in the podcast, it's really important to be able to link up with somebody that you can connect with through mentorship. And so we always call that our matchmaking day, when we match up all the novice hunters with the experienced hunters. And so that's a great way of putting it. And I think that's a good theme to think about for all of hunting. Is it's very individual. People have their own reasons. They have their own loves. They have their things that they're uncomfortable with. And so respecting differences and figuring out exactly where you can link somebody up where they're going to have fun and they're going to have a rewarding experience. That's what I think.
I love it. Joe, thanks for coming on. We ran over today, but it was a great conversation. I think people are going to dig it. I know I did. Joe, what do you want to leave people with before we wrap up the podcast?
I mean, thank you guys for having me on. And obviously, if you are interested in becoming a mentor, and this is a goofy year, but moving forward, we're looking to do mentor programs all throughout Wisconsin through BHA. We're looking to expand. I know Bill doesn't want to come to Madison, but I mean, if we want to fire up, I mean, we got the playbook for that Learn to Bow hunt. So, I mean, Bill, the world is your oyster, man. Carpe diem. You can do your own Learn to Bow hunt, Stevens Point. So, the sky's the limit at this point. And we really do want to expand our R3 program to other parts of the state. So by all means, if anybody's interested, Joe Steffen, obviously reach out to me, reach out to Bill, reach out to Emily. We'll all get each other in touch and we'll get you involved. And it's probably one of the most rewarding experiences as a hunter that I've experienced. So I hope that other people can appreciate that. And I hope that we start to shift in the incline instead of the decline. So thanks again, guys.
I like it. All right. Everyone listening, reminder, BHA HQ Podcast and Blast. I've got to say it. It's in the regs. So check that out every other Tuesday. Joe or Ryan, where are we at with BHA Wisconsin events? I know we were going to touch on that. Pint night.
There is a pint night that is still scheduled for July 30th from 6 to 10-ish is what I'm being told. Whale Tails Archery, Dousman, Wisconsin. Bring your bow, fling some arrows, and have a couple beers. Hopefully between now and then nothing changes. But as of right now, we are still a go.
Awesome.
Yep. And the only thing that with the stuff going on where we've pushed our bull hunt and our early season rifle hunt, but we're still hoping to do a late season doe hunt, and we're still hoping to do an ice fishing jamboree sort of thing. So that's on the docket for R3 wise, and then event wise too. We're hoping to we're going to do some sort of giveaway. So stay tuned, watch the social media. We're going to do some sort of giveaway, some sort of a incentive to get people more involved with BHA in the virtual times. So.
Awesome. And then everybody stay tuned. A little teaser for next week. Lady Deer Camp, Sarah Top from Artemis Sportswoman, and Kelly and Emily will be running us through that. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. Joe, thanks again, and see everybody later.
Cheers.